Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly series of shirim on the Zohar Kadosh, the Zohar on the Parsha, where we draw the light of Moshe Rabbeinu into the vessels of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and we illuminate the light of Moshe Rabbeinu with the fire of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, revealing the unity of Moshe and Rashbi, Alisa Lamarim v'Shvisa Shevi Lakachos Matamos Mibnei Adam, that Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Shemayim to retrieve a gift, and that gift is Shevi Roshei Tevos Shimon Bar Yochai, to draw down the illumination of the Torah so that we can continue to drink from its cooling and healing waters ad vias goel. We find ourselves at the end of Parshas, at the end of Sefer Bereshis, coming to an end, entering into exile, the descent down, this point of departure from the illuminated life with all of its ups and downs of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the ultimate transformation of the Avos into Klal Yisrael through the bridge of Yosef HaTzadik and the descent down into the exile of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim becomes the place in which Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are going to emerge. It becomes the vacant space, that void where the light is going to ultimately be revealed. And so as we prepare to enter into Shemos, there's always a moment of loss. There's always a moment of closedness, of a feeling like the story is over. When the narrative begins to move into the next chapter, the last page of the original chapter begins to feel, oh my goodness, what's going to happen when this page is finally written? Because we still do not yet know what the next chapter is going to begin with, which leaves a person wondering whether there will be a next chapter. And ultimately, it's at this point of the closeness of the mind and the acceptance of the fact that it might be a closed chapter and I don't have control over that. And ultimately, I have to accept the end when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it's the end. That becomes the Mesiras Nefesh, the prerequisite preparation for survival and exile, where we throw ourselves with abandonment, Lamala mitam v'das, beyond knowledge, beyond rationality, but rather with an inner knowing that's rooted in a humble, deep, vulnerable faith that is so deeply rooted within the letters of the self that it can't even be read by the individual itself. It precedes the self, and therefore we can't reach the foundation from whence the self emerges, which is why we can't find the burial place of Moshe Rabbeinu. But it's this secret place of Moshe Rabbeinu, this burial place of Moshe Rabbeinu, this closeness that ends Sefer Bereshis and bridges into the world of Sefer Shemos, where we're going to have to cultivate the tools necessary for the survival of the descent into exile. In Sefer Bereshis, it's Sefer Hayashar, there's still a light, there's an illuminated light that's revealed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's original plan for creation is still apparently felt. But as we enter into Shemos, which can also be read as Shamos, which is desolation and emptiness, so when a person enters into exile, there seems to be a ve'akam melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yadas Yosef. There's a forgetfulness of the bris. There's a forgetfulness of the hyperconnectivity at the heart of all things, and the secret of Yashrus, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with a particular destination, and everything is moving towards that destination. And we fall into the cheshbonos ravos. We fall into the manifold nature of complication and being lost and being stuck, and no longer being able to retrieve the original echo of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's cry to each and every one of us in our jobs in this world. And so as we prepare ourselves to enter into exile in Sefer Shemos, as we descend down into namelessness, as we descend down into that place of forgetfulness, into that Gullus Hadibor, so Vayechi gives us a secret of how to survive. At the very end, we learn the secret of surviving. And obviously the secret of survival and the preparation for exile is going to be a survival that survives death itself. Because Bereshis dies. With Vayechi, we see that Bereshis dies. Bereshis ends, it goes away, it disappears. And in denying the death of Bereshis, we will not prepare ourselves properly for Shemos. We will stay stuck in the imagination or the mirage of Bereshis, never allowing ourselves to face Shemos because we feel that we don't have enough strength because we need Bereshis, and therefore we rather stay by Bereshis, pretending that it's still alive. Adarabba Ipcha Mistabra, what Vayechi teaches us is that Bereshis dies. Bereshis undergoes a certain concealment, a certain element of death. There's a closing of that chapter, but it's specifically within that death, it's specifically within the closing of the chapter that the irreducible light of Bereshis continues to grow, and it allows the page to be turned to Shemos. There is no Shemos without the light of Bereshis that continues to be there. The only difference is that the light of Bereshis has now undergone a process of concealment, and it has made itself invisible again. It has returned back to its pure potential state of perpetual expression. And it no longer needs to be revealed in an active way as it was with the letters that were emergent from the book of Bereshis. The light of Bereshis is present even within the transition into exile. The prerequisite to receive that light that exists even after its revelation disappears is the acceptance of the death of that light. When a person acknowledges that Bereshis ends, when a person makes room for the fact that Bereshis disappears and that light of Yaakov Avinu and the light of the Avos HaKadoshim is no longer going to be apparent in the way that it's always been apparent, and there's a descent into a different stage, it's only in the acceptance of that disintegration, the acceptance of the disappearance, the acceptance of the momentary descent into a place of forgetfulness, and a full embrace of that, which enables us to then come to find how that thing that we thought was disappeared is actually present very much in the realm of exile as well. And that's going to be the strength needed to survive exile, of revealing to us that even though Bereshis has already died, it's still there. And the only way to go through that process is to accept the death of Bereshis and then come to be surprised by the secret of Tchias HaMesim with the ever-present nature of Bereshis at the heart of Shemos, the Aleph at the heart of the Beis, the Luchos Rishonos at the heart of the Luchos Shnios, Geula within the heart of exile. That's why Parshas Vayechi is a Parsha Satuma. There's no pause to enable a person to contemplate the division between the idea of Vayigash and Vayechi. It's a Parsha Satuma. There's no tzimtzum. There's no revach ben hadvekim. There's no space given to contemplate the transition and the speed in which one event leads to the next. Because like any trauma, like any death, like any departure, it appears to be sudden, it appears to be irretrievable. And that momentary feeling that should be felt in the least painful way imaginable, that each person feels when they lose something, they feel that they've actually lost. We have to go through that crucible of experience to come to find the fact that it survives. It survives. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. The entire book of Vayechi is about death, but it's called Vayechi. The entire Zohar Kadosh of Vayechi is about the departure of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the struggle that the Chavraya Kadisha had when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai disappears, an ultimate secret that the Rebbe leaves an irreducible trace within the mind of the student that can only be uncovered in the absence of the teacher itself, just as Yaakov Avinu's true expression of life could only take shape once there was a certain element of Misa, when there was a certain confrontation with the void. Only then can there be a refillment of the void and a refulfillment of the void that comes to show me that even the voided nature of disappearance is part and parcel of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That Rashbi is still alive, even though Rashi passes away. That Moshe Rabbeinu is still alive, even though Moshe Rabbeinu passes away. That Yaakov Avinu lo meis, that Yaakov Avinu is still alive, even though he very much passes away. And Yitzchak Avinu is very much alive, even though he passed away. This is the life of all of the tzaddikim. That they're hoyreges atzmum for the Shechina, and it's only then that they become the receptacle, the merkava, to reveal that true presence. And so what we're going to see in this parsha, in this Zohar, is the confrontation with the closed-eyed nature of transitions. I don't know how I'm going to transition from Bereshis into Shemos. I don't know how, as a Talmud of Rashbi, we can live in a world post-Rashbi. But it's specifically by going through that crucible of feeling as if I've lost the thing that I'm so fundamentally dependent upon, that a person can see that, oh my goodness, I continue to function even though I thought I was not able to function, and they come to discover that they continue to function even where they thought they couldn't function, because the thing that they think is lost is not truly lost, but it's rather present by way of disappearance itself. And Yaakov is going to be there in Mitzrayim as well, and the Shechina is going to be there in Mitzrayim, and Rabbi Shimon is with his Chavraya all the time, and the Tzaddik is with the Talmidim all the time, and they're afui belev haTzaddik, that each and every person who's connected to the light of the Tzaddikim is baked into the heart of the Tzaddik, so that it's ever present, even if it appears that it disappears. And that's going to be the lesson that we're going to see from the Zohar of this week. And the whole Zohar of Parshas Vayechi is mamish, so beautiful. So we're on Daf Reish Yud Vav Amud Beis, which is Gevurah. It's Gevurah Reish Yud Vav. We were discussing in the Shir on the Ramchal Zadir Bamarom how Reish Yud Vav 216, which is the gematria of Gevurah, which is the gematria of Omek, of depth, is also 3 times 72, which is 3 times Chesed. Because in truth, the Chesed is hidden within the very framework of Gevurah itself, because without the Gevuros, the Chesed could never be revealed. And that's what we're going to see that Yaakov Avinu teaches us in Mitzrayim specifically, that one can find joy within exile itself. One can find joy at the precipice of loss, because it's specifically there that they can draw down the deepest presence necessary, even though it feels like it's coming about as a result of darkness. Rabbi Yaakov Amar, Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. Yaakov Avinu lived in Eretz Mitzrayim. Amai parshasa dastima. Why is this parsha, as Chazal already asked in Bereshis Rabbah, why is this parsha sasum? Why are the eyes of the Jewish people closed here? What's the unconscious thing that we can't process yet? What's the stone in the realm of reasoning that is still not allowing us to process information properly? What blocks us? Why is it closed? Rabbi Yaakov Amar, Rabbi Yaakov Amar, Rabbi Yaakov Amar, B'shaisa demis Yaakov, when Yaakov dies, the Zohar HaKadosh is revealing almost a schloik ha'elyon here, that in teaching us about Yaakov Avinu dying and not really dying, the man the Amar is Rabbi Yaakov, almost like Moshe Shapir Ka'amart, that how do we know that Yaakov didn't die? Ultimately, it's Rabbi Yaakov Amar, Rabbi Yaakov Amar, Rabbi Yaakov teaches us, B'shaisa demis Yaakov, when Yaakov Avinu passed away, estimu einehen the Yisrael. The reason that this Parsha is closed is because when Yaakov Avinu passes away, the eyes of Klal Yisrael are closed off. The eyes of the herd cannot see when the tzaddik is not there anymore, when a person doesn't have direction. Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Rabbi Yehuda answers, the kedain nachtu legalusa ve'ishta avidu b'hoin. And Rabbi Yehuda, who's Malchus, Rabbi Yaakov is Tiferes. So Tiferes is looking at the sadness and the closing of the eyes as a result of the departure of Yaakov and Yisrael, which is the element of Zer Anpin. And Rabbi Yehuda is looking at it from the perspective of Malchus, and he's saying the reason the eyes are closed is because when Yaakov Avinu passed away, the Shechina descended into exile and we became slaves to Paro in Egypt. Rabbi Shimon Amar, Rabbi Shimon says, the Butzina Kadisha, Rabbi Shimon says, Maksiv La'ela. What does it mean when it's written above V'yeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen, and that Yaakov settled in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Goshen, which is the gematria of Simcha, V'yechzuvu v'yibru v'yirbu ma'oid, and that he multiplied and he was many there. V'chsiv, and the pasuk says Vayechi Yaakov, that Yaakov lived, he lived truly in Mitzrayim. Deloy it chaze la Parsha ben da leda ma inen kaime betafnukin bemalkin vekabilu inuga ukisufin legarme uf Yaakov nami kaim betafnuke malkin beiguna vekisufa legarme lo isparish da ben da vahacha ikr vayechi. What does it mean that the Jewish people and Yaakov settled in the land of Goshen for those times, those years in Mitzrayim, and that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim? It means that both of them were experiencing the process in the same way, that there was nothing lacking in those years. In those 17 years of goodness, 17 is the gematria of Tov, that they existed in tafnukin and pleasures, the malkin, as if he was being treated like a king, the kibule inuga, and he was receiving pleasure, the kisufin, the garmehu, and a deep yearning above. So too Yaakov Avinu was also experiencing all of those pleasures befit a king, with all of the pleasures and the desire and the yearning. There was no separation between the two stages, meaning to say Yaakov and Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, experienced refinement and revelation in the place of Mitzrayim. The whole kol yume loy ikra vayechi, begin the whole yume betzara have betzara ishtachacham. Because Yaakov Avinu's entire life up until this point has not actually been a life. It can't be considered as if it were a life. Why? Because all of those days were filled with pain, and he found himself in a state of pain, and a life filled with pain can't be considered an essential form of life. Aleh Ksiv, upon him it's written, Pasuk in Eov, Lo shalvasi v'lo shakatati v'lo nachati v'yavo yoregas. I didn't find peace, and I didn't find quiet, and I was not able to find rest. All I found was anger and rage that emerged. Basar denochas Mitzrayim, that represents the first stage of Yaakov Avinu's life. But once Yaakov Avinu descended down into Mitzrayim, Ikre Vayechi, it's as if he lived. He saw his son who had become the viceroy to the king, and he saw all of his children alive. Zakan Sadikaya, the Kulian, Ta'anuge, Tafkune Alma, and he saw all of the Shvatim experiencing life with the fullness of spiritual pleasure and delight and the pleasures of this world. Who Yosef Benaihu and Yaakov Avinu, Yisrael Saba, was sitting amongst them. Kachamar Tavdi Yosef al Dordayev, like a good, pleasant wine where the excess or the residual parts of the wine that can't be maintained within the wine itself float up to the top, so the dredge is separated from the wine itself. That is the time in which Yaakov lived. And that life of Yaakov Avinu was a life of revelation and reflection and growth. So what's being revealed here is something profound. It's that Yaakov Avinu's entire life is not referred to as a life, and it's only upon the descent into Mitzrayim where Yaakov Avinu is going to encounter a life. And what happens in Mitzrayim? Yaakov Avinu goes to die. So ultimately we see that it's in the edge of Yaakov Avinu's life where he goes down into Mitzrayim that ultimately it's going to be the one part of his experience that can be seen as having been truly alive. But it's difficult to grasp because Mitzrayim is the Meitzayam. Mitzrayim is the place of concealment. Mitzrayim is the place of Gevurah Elyona. Mitzrayim is Ervas Haaretz. Mitzrayim is the Tzimtzum. Mitzrayim is the Galus Hadibur. Mitzrayim is the descent down into speechlessness, where we lose ourselves, where we lose sight of the potency of our souls, where we hold on to the very bare framework of what it means to remain ourselves in spite of all of the rapid shifts and changes that are going on outside of us. How could it be that it's specifically there, down in Mitzrayim, in the Meitzar Yam, where the Tanin Hagadol is Robetz Batoch HaYa'or, where the great serpent floats and moves within the Ya'or, within the Nile River? How could it be that Yaakov Avinu finds pleasantness there? How could it be that that's the true source of life? How could it be that it's specifically in the place of concealment and darkness, at the precipice of his departure from this world, that Yaakov Avinu is going to be able to be said to have truly been alive? So the remez, I believe, is being hinted to in the language that the Zohar HaKadosh uses over here when it says as follows, that when Yaakov reflects on his life that he experienced in Mitzrayim, with Yosef HaTzadik and with all of the Shvatim together, and everybody was experiencing things in the right way, so the metaphor that the Zohar HaKadosh uses to describe Yaakov amongst his children is that V'hu Yasav Beinayhu, and he sat amongst them, Kechamer Tav Di Yasav Al Dordaya, like a good wine that rests upon the residual elements that would disturb the wine. Gevuros. This language of Chamer Tav Di Yasav Al Dordev is the language that the Zohar Kadosh and the Arizal use to describe Gevurah in its refinement. Gevurah in its refinement and the secret of the Butzina de Kardenusa. The Butzina de Kardenusa, the dark candle, the dark illumination, is the first instantiation of Gevurah and restriction and limitation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places within the world. So to speak, it's referred to as the Kav Hamidas, the measuring yard that sets up dimensions and particularity to each and everything, ensuring that each thing is its own thing. This is what takes shape in exile. Gevuros are unleashed in exile, but ultimately, if a person is able to hold cup on the shorish of the Gevuros, which is the Butzina de Kardenusa, which is the Chamar Tav, the Yosef al Chamre, which is the Chamar Tav, the Yosef al Dordayev, that sits upon the intensity of the Gevuros, meaning to say Yaakov Avinu is revealing that even though we're in a place of Gevurah right now, even though we're in a place of departure, even though we're in the precipice of that death-bringing exilic descent, nevertheless, if we're able to hold on to the secret of the shoresh of it all, to realize that the Gevurah itself, the tzimtzum itself, the stima sa'enin, the tzimtzum, the concealment of the eyes, the fact that Yaakov Avinu couldn't remember the kates, all of that is fundamentally part and parcel of the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing the playing field in which we're going to reveal the deepest light imaginable in the Dir B'Tachtonim. Yaakov Avinu is reminding them that he's going to be like the Chamar Tav, the Yasav al Dorde, the Butzina de Kardenusa, the Shorish of the Dinim. And in that place, you can descend into Mitzrayim and understand how each and every element of Mitzrayim is a concealment for the sake of a revelation. That Sachsachti Mitzrayim b'Mitzrayim means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu eventually is going to crush the limitation down below of Mitzrayim with the illuminated limitation up above of Mitzrayim Ha'elyon, of the Meitzar Yam, of the opening of the concealment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Shefa down into this world. So when we uncover the depth of the Tzimtzum, like the Chamar Tav, the Yosef al Dordev, like the Butzina de Kardenusa, then Yaakov Avinu has the ability of teaching us why one can find joy specifically in Mitzrayim at the precipice of death. Ella Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says as follows. Rabbi Shimon says as follows. And Rabbi Shimon now is going to teach such a beautiful, heartbreaking teaching about the nature of a love between a parent and a child, or between self and other, between a husband and a wife, between the relationship between friends, relationship between teacher and student, relationship between self and self. And it goes down very poignantly into the depths of the self. Ela Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says as follows. Kol yuma di Yaakov b'tzara have b'tzara a'aver loin b'kadmisa. The entire life of Yaakov Avinu, up until that point, were lived in a certain state of pain. That he had worked with all of the pain that had gone over him beforehand. Kevan decham Yosef. Once he saw what had happened to Yosef, v'havekayim kaima, and Yosef was near him. Kad Yaakov mistakel b'Yosef. When Yaakov, after having gone through what he went through in the house of Lavan and with Esav and losing Rachel on the road, Yaakov Avinu was sad. Yaakov Avinu was carrying the pain of all of those journeys. But once Yosef was born and he was near Yaakov, Yaakov would look at Yosef, I am mistakel bi Yosef, have ishtalim benafshe, and he would feel good again. When Yaakov Avinu would look at Yosef, he would feel whole again. Why? Ki'ilu chama le'ima de Yosef, as if he were actually seeing Rachel. As actually we're seeing Rachel, as if he was remembering the love of his youth and he was retrieving all of those lost things that were gone. There was a memory, there was a remez there. And that remez was enough to awaken him to that thing that was lost and make it as if nothing was lost. The Shapiru de Yosef, Damil Shapiru de Rachel. Because Yosef was a Yafa Tohu Mara, which is Rosh Tevos Yasom, he was an orphan from his mother, and he looked like Rachel herself. The Have Damye Begarme Kamadeloy Avir Aleha Tsara Beyuma. And when Yosef was near Yaakov, it was as if there were no pain whatsoever. Everything was answered. There were no problems. V'kad Yosef is parish minei. But when Yosef HaTzadik departed away from Yaakov as a result of the actions of his brothers and the Neira Alila al Bnei Adam, the unconscious ways in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the Welt, the moment that Yosef HaTzadik departed, all of the pain came flushing back. And it was as if I have never had a moment of rest, not a moment of peace, and I only find rage and intensity. Because that departure of Yosef was harder than anything that Yaakov Avinu had to go through. And at the moment that Yosef was separated from Yaakov, what does the pasuk say? Yosef ben Shevas Reishana Hayaroyatzon, that Yosef was 17 years old. That's 17, which is the gematria of Tov, the hidden goodness, which comes about by the unification of above and below, the hidden, the concealed, and the secret of Es HaShamayim ve'Es HaAretz, Rosh Tevos Aleph Hey Vav Hey, which is the Shem of Das, which is the Gushpanka de Malka, the stamp of the king that connects above and below, like the Tzaddik Yisrael Olam. Yosef was 17 years old. And the entire life of Yaakov, he had not experienced suffering like that. And he would cry each and every day for those 17 years of Yosef HaTzadik about what had happened to him. And now in the end, Yosef HaTzadik places his hands upon Yaakov's eyes. Now, in replacement of those 17 years of pain that you used to mourn, you are going to find 17 years of relief and pleasure, because kol man de misavel al Yishalayim zoiche loroso benechmaso, because the yearning and the mournful thing about losing something is going to be the birth and the emergence of the retrieval of that thing which we thought we lost. And things always equal out. This is what the pasuk means. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim, and Yaakov was truly alive. Shevas Reishana, the 17 years corresponding to the 17 years, all of the pain that corresponded to the contemplation of those 17 years of Yosef HaTzadik, all came back to Yaakov Avinu, fulfilling him with an inner goodness of the mind that enabled him to live Alma Da'asi, to live in Eretz Mitzrayim, in the goodness of the land of Mitzrayim, the beauty of the Hamtakas Adinim B'Sharasham, which is the secret of the Butzina de Kardinusa, which is the preparation for Shemos itself. The only way to descend down into exile is to be fully aware of that every ounce of Gevurah that we're going to encounter is rooted in the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zok the Heilige Zohar HaKadosh. Tana, it's taught. Kol inan shanin shchinta yikra de kutshbrichu ime ishtachacha ubegin kach chayim ikron. For those 17 years that Yaakov Avinu lived in Mitzrayim, it was specifically there that he had the ability to have Hashras HaShechina. It was specifically there that he had the ability to have a life again. Because even though it was a place of concealment, he was fundamentally aware at this point of the purpose of concealment. Ta'chazi, come and see, v'techi ruach Yaakov avihem. Pasuk says that the spirit of Yaakov Avinu, their father, was lifted. Et chazi daha b'kadmisa mishave. The Zohar Kadosh is teaching us. We're about to learn that Yaakov Avinu is going to die. And the trauma of death comes about because prior to that moment of death, all that was existing was life. But the Zohar Kadosh over here is saying that if we're saying that Yaakov Avinu is alive now in Mitzrayim, the implication is that he died already in the beginning. And therefore the notion of death is not so final because it already happened already. The notion that you're so afraid of has already taken shape. He's experienced it before. And it softens the intensity of all of the event. Talchazi, come and see. Pasuk says, "V'tchiruach Yaakov avihem." Yaakov, the spirit of Yaakov, your father, finds life. It chazeh dahabe kadmisa misave. The implication of that is that prior to finding life, he was as if he was dead. Hahu rucha dilei. His spirit had died already. And we know that when a person's spirit has fallen, or a person's spirit is in a state of sadness, it's impossible for them to be zeichet to Ruach HaKodesh. and they can't find that divine inspiration that enables them to have an istafka rucha berucha, where my spirit connects to the spirit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I can have hashra'ah. The harucha de la'ela lo sharya berikana. The reason is that the spirit above does not rest upon something that is empty, something that is deficient, that can be fulfilled, meaning there is an inherent deficiency at the heart of the fullness of the human being. That's the shlemus of the chesronos. So to say that emptiness, it doesn't mean that there's no such thing as a chisaron. It just means that emptiness, we have to learn how to own our deficiencies, and then the deficiencies are no longer empty. It's rabos v'chesronam al kol masha barala chayos b'am nefesh kol chai. That rabos v'chesronam, when a person has a chisaron and they're mashlim that chisaron, so we can recognize that chisaron as a fundamental role of serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's not rekonius. That's not emptiness. Emptiness is a feeling of a deflation, of a depletion, of a depression of energy. And the bracha of Ruach HaKodesh will not rest upon an empty thing. It will rest upon something that's shavur. It will rest upon something that understands its smallness, but it will not rest upon something that it feels is empty, that emptiness of feeling, that apathy, that death of feeling. Rekonus is not a feeling bad about distance. Rekonus is a not feeling anything at all. And that's the place that the Shekhinah Kadosh is not going to rest. So we see that Yaakov Avinu, to a certain degree, revealed that element of rekanius, of that emptiness, by way of losing Rachel or by way of losing Yosef, that the Shekhinah wasn't going to rest upon that place. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, in fact, the only place that the Shekhinah is going to rest in is in a place of shlemus. That shlemus that's kolel within itself, and it acknowledges the necessary space of the lo shlim, of the fact that all wholeness is always in reflection of a previous stage of deficiency, and the new stage of wholeness is also deficient in relationship to the incoming stage of wholeness. As long as we're aware that Shalem contains within itself a Shalem and a Chatzi, and that Moshe contains within himself a Kaisar and a Palgei Chetzar, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, and it's always both and. So then we'll understand what shlemus means. It doesn't mean the negation of all deficiency. It just means an acceptance of deficiency by way of wholeness. Be'eser shlim, that's the only place that the Ruach HaKodesh is going to rest, the opposite of emptiness. V'lei be'eser chaser, it's not going to rest in a place that has this empty deficiency. V'lei be'eser pagim, and it's not going to rest in a person who sees themselves as blemished. V'lei be'eser atziv, and it's not going to rest in a person who feels sad. Ele be'eser de'ischavein be'eser chadu, the place that the Shekhinah is going to rest is only when a person attaches their mind to a place of joy. It's only in a place where a person's alignment and attunement to the notion of joy is going to be the prerequisite for Hashras Shekhinah. Begin kach, and for this reason, Kol Inan Shanin di Yosef is parish me Avi di Yaakov. The entire time that Yosef was separated from Yaakov, where Tiferes and Yisod were separate, Ave Atziv. Yaakov Avinu was experiencing a certain form of sadness. Lo Sharya Beishchinte. The Shekhinah was not there with him, and it returned here in Mitzrayim. So we see that on the precipice of death, of the descent into exile, it's specifically there that we uncover the tools and the necessity of grappling with loss for the sake of realizing that it's all to reveal to us the depth of presence that has always been there, revealing joy upon joy. And every moment of sadness over the sense of departure is going to be transformed into a vessel of a moment of joy. Tana, the Zohar continues, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Amar Rav Abba, in the name of Rav Abba. So Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, in the name of Rav Abba, the scribe of Rabbi Shimon. Ksiv ivdu as Hashem b'simcha. Pasuk says that we have to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with joy. Ba'u lefan of birnanan, we have to come close to him with song. La'afka deleis pulchana de Kodesh Barichu ele megoy chedva. We come to see from here that the only way that a person has the ability of connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is by way of joy. And again, this is all being taught in the context of why is this Parsha a closed Parsha? It's teaching us the importance of joy. The Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Leis shchinta sharye megoy atzvus. The Shekhinah does not rest from within sadness. T'chsiv va'ata kechuli menagein v'haya as the pasuk says that in order to retrieve Ruach HaKodesh, he asks for the menagain to come and play the nigun through the menagain plus zimna amnai. Why are there three forms of song here? Menagain, v'haya kenagain, hamanagain. Why is there the singer and the three forms of song? Why? Begin le'isara rucha meishlemusa dekulad hu ruach shlema. The threefold song is there to awaken the fourfold song, which comes down and rests upon the vessels of the threefold song. The threefold song, the three times nigun, is the shir pashat kafel mishulush. It's the preparation for exile of searching out the good, feeling that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us no matter what. And it's only by that preparation to feel that Hashem is with us that we can enter into the shir meruba, which is the lowest place imaginable, which is the full four-squared nature of it, which reveals the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here, which is the Shir of Emunah, which can only be revealed down here in Malchus and the Afra de Manakula, and that's the fourfold song, where we overcome all of the despondency and reveal the secret of Simcha. That's the secret of Negina, Rabbi Nachman says, of playing upon the Chesronos and awakening ourselves to a Ruach of Simcha in the places where there was a Ruach of Atzvus Chas v'Shalom beforehand. So why is it when awakening joy, it says, Va'ata kichuli menagin vaya kenagin hamanagin, the threefold song, menagin menagin plus zimna amai. Why are there three forms of song? To draw about the spirit from the fourth side, which is going to be the shlemus of all things, the secret of Malchus and her shoyresh, which is the fullness of all things. Again, revealing to us how it's specifically within the lower place and departure and descent into this worldliness and the place of death and the place of concealment and the place of Yispardu Kol Palei Oven that the greatest Kiddush Hashem is going to come out from, in the Shir Meruba of it all, in the Olam HaAsiyah. The Shir Pashat Kafel Meshulish Meruba is Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, specifically in Asiya, in that place of Ragleha Yardu Mavis, in that place of the possibility of death, of that descent out of Gan Eden, where we eat from the Eitz HaDas Tovera and we die and we lose sight of the Eitz HaChaim. It's specifically in that descent away that we're going to come to uncover the depth of light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in store for us through the secret of Tchias HaMesim, through the secret of Yaakov Avinu Lo Meis, and the secret of the Shir Meruba, where the body itself reveals itself to be the keeper of the score of the future. Rabbi Abba says, Taman Tinyin, we learned already, Me'arba Citrin, when you bring the fourth into the three, it says sing three times, and now you bring out the fourth. So we learned that there's four corners, there's four sides, Kula Ishtachich, all of them are always perpetually present, the Kol, Shairashin, the Ilayin, Vitatayin, Behu Achidin, and these fourfold root of all things, the Shem Havaya, the fourfold expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, of Chachma, Bina, Zer Anpin, and Malchus, of the Ispashtas, Istalkus, Ispastas, Istalkus, expression, regression, expression, regression, tzimtzum kav, these fourfold expressions, everything is found from within that place. Everything is rooted in there, above and below. Bahun achid, and they're all unified there. They're all unified in that place. Vitana, and it's taught. Da'ayil v'danafik. These four sides of things compose the secret paradoxical unity that emerges through the four-sided nature of reality. This side goes up, this side goes out. Da'asasim, this side is concealed. Da'parish, this side is opened up. Is ached, chad b'chaverta. All of the different oppositional expressions of reality are unified together. V'inun avhin l'kula, and they become the root source of all things. We see again this repetition of the notion that it's specifically within the lowest place that the light of life is going to be found. Rabbi Shimon Amar. Rabbi Shimon says, Rak ba'avoisecha cheshek Hashem, ksiv ba'avoisecha mamish tasa. The secret of only towards your forefathers has HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired. It's the secret of actual Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Umashma dechsiv rak. Why does it say only? Rak mashma umeilin misparshin umisachten kol shar achrinin v'salken shamala etc. It's true. All that exists is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and ultimately everything else is going to come from that place. So now we're going to see, I know we're going further in the Zohar Kadosh than we usually do, but now we're going to see how all of this process of Yaakov and loss and death and departure and Mitzrayim, we're going to see it reflected in the life of Rabbi Shimon and his Chavayav also, where we see this deep awareness of the fact that ultimately, even though the tzaddik is ne'evad, Rahman al-Itzlan, and the tzaddik departs and the tzaddik goes into a place of concealment, nevertheless, it doesn't mean that the Talmidim or the Hasidim are there left alone. That even though Moshe Rabbeinu departs, it doesn't mean we're apart from Moshe Rabbeinu. This was the problem of the Chet HaEgel. We felt that because Moshe Rabbeinu tarried, so we no longer had the accessibility and the connectivity to Moshe Rabbeinu. What the true tzaddikim are coming to teach, what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is coming to teach, what Lubutzina Kadisha is coming to teach, what Yaakov Avinu is coming to teach at the precipice of the descent into exiles, the secret of the shirish of the Gevurah, the Butzina de Kardinusa, and how tzimtzum and hester and concealment and histalkus and asiluk and histalkus and an aliyah is ultimately only apparently concealing, but in truth, it's a doubling of its revelation, which is the secret of what we're going to encounter in exile. Tana, the Zohar Kadosh opens up. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Min yoyma de istalik Rabbi Shimon min ma'arta, from the day that Rabbi Shimon left the cave, milin loy etkasin min chavraya, v'razin iloyin have mistaklin ve'esgalian me benayu, ki ilu is yahavu hahi shaisa betura de Sinai. From the moment that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai left the cave, There have been no matters that are concealed to us from the companions, no supernal secrets that we weren't able to look at in a revealed way, as if we were receiving them from Har Sinai at that moment. But Basar the Shachiv, after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was nostalgic, Ksiv Vayiskaru Ma'ayanos Satahoim Va'arubas Hashemayim, that the well springs of below, the abysmal depths that were ascendant above, as well as the well springs from above, they were closed off. There was no more expression of that light below. And the Chavraya just whispered. This whispering is so fundamental. They spoke without speaking. They couldn't not speak, but they also had nothing to say. Chavraya merachshin. They would whisper amongst themselves. And they wouldn't come to find what they were searching for. They would try and find. They would search for the secret. Merachshin mile. They would try and quiver the words, but ultimately they didn't come to a place of understanding. What's a proof to this? What's a proof to the fact that we lost insight when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was nostalgic? At least this is the havamin of what happens when the tzaddikim are nifter. That one day, Yumachad have a Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was sitting, apitcha de Tiveria. He was sitting at the opening of Tiveria, the Chame Tre Gamle, and he saw two camels, the Salke Katfire Me'ale, that they were carrying packages upon themselves, the Katfin Nafal Metule de Katpire, and one of the packages of wheat or grain fell and it opened up, Va'atut Sapre, and a bird came along, Va'adle Matu Alayu is Ba'aku. And before the bird could land on it, it was gone. It departed. And afterwards, a number of birds came. And they rested upon their visharulon Tartisha, and they rested upon a tree, and they were singing and screaming, and they weren't separating. Shamu chad kala, they heard one voice. Itra de itrin bekadrin sharya lemari lebar. These two birds that came down, they came down from the place that they came down from, and they got stuck in the place that they were stuck in, and their two voices became a singular voice, and that was the crown of the morning, which was rising in the morning. Ad Rabbi Yehuda was sitting. Avar chad gavra, a certain traveler went by, ishgach bahu, and he looked at him. Loi kayim da haksiv v'yered ha'ayet ala pigarim v'yashav v'esam Avram. So this stranger walks past Rabbi Yehuda and he says, what, you didn't feel the need to accomplish for yourself that which Avram Avinu accomplished when it said that the vultures and the birds of prey, they came down upon the carcasses and they rested there, and Avram was there as well. Rabbi Yehuda v'ha'avdinan v'layas Parsha. That's exactly what I did, said Rabbi Yehuda. It's almost like this absurd thing. He's saying, you're telling me I didn't do that. That's exactly what I did. I didn't push them away. V'layas Parshin ahada reisha hu gavra. That person answered him, I'm Rabbi Yehuda v'ha'avidad v'loyis parshin. That's what I did, and I didn't separate them. Ahadar reisha hahu gavra. That individual who walked by turned his head back and he says, Ad deloy marit da reisha demare v'ad deloy galish l'matchinuse. Zak, the Heilige Zohar HaKadosh. That person turns his head back around and he says as follows, Adayin loy himrit zaharoish adonenu. You still have not understood the depth and the benefits of the Torah that emerge from the hairs of your Rebbe. You still have not even begun to grasp the secrets that your Rebbe comes to reveal. That's the Maisa where Rabbi Yehuda is sitting outside and he sees these two camels come and the package falls and the bird doesn't have the ability or the strength to eat it, and then this person comes along and causes Rabbi Yehuda to second guess himself, that he has not yet understood the true depth of his Rebbe, Rabbi Shimon. Rahat Abasre Tlas Milan, Rabbi Yehuda ran after him 3 milan. V'loy amarle, and he didn't say anything to him. He didn't give him an explanation. Chalish daisa de Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda had a chalisha sadas. Rabbi Yehuda lost his certainty in himself. Yumachad admoich tchois ilana v'chame b'chalma. One day, Rabbi Yehuda was sleeping, resting underneath a tree, and he fell asleep. And he saw in his sleep, Dalid Gadfin Metaktkin V'Salik Rabbi Shimon Alayhu. There were 4 directions that were rising, and Rabbi Shimon was upon them. The Sefer Torah Ime, and there was a Sefer Torah with him. V'Loi Shavikal Sefer Razini Loyin V'Agadata D'Loi Salik Loyin B'Hadei V'Salik Lahon L'Rekia. And there was not a book in this world of Pnimius Torah that did not ascend up to the heavens with Rabbi Shimon. V'Chama Demaskasia Me'ein of Loyiskalia. And Rabbi Yehuda saw that Rabbi Shimon was concealed from his eyes and that he couldn't see. Kadesayir Amar Vade Mid of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda opened up his eyes and he said, Avada, Rabbi Shimon chachmasa istalik me'ara. From the time that Rabbi Shimon has departed, wisdom has departed from the land. Woe to us, woe to our generation, where such a precious stone that had all of the colors being seen through it, and whom upon everybody was capable of relying above and below, that it's been taken from us. He came along to Rav Abba and he told him what was happening. Salik Rav Abba stood up and Yodai al Reisha, he placed his hands upon his head, Ubacha v'amar, and he said as follows, Rabbi Shimon Reicha Tachanin Mina Tavana Mana Tava Kol Yuma V'laktin Lei Kamad Chsiv Hamimatim Asaf Esther Chamarim. It says, Rabbi Shimon, the granary that would grind food, pleasant food for each and every day. As the pasuk says, that each and every day they were capable of collecting that which they needed for the day. And now those grinding vessels have been removed from the world and nothing is remaining. But there's something that always remains. Take one sansenas of the man b'tein shama malei ha'omer and place within it the full measure of the omer. And place it in front of the ark for memory. But it's not revealed. But who's going to know? We see something incredible taking shape here. Rabbi Yehuda comes to terms with the fact that he doesn't understand, that he doesn't have a full grasp of who Rabbi Shimon is. He hasn't grasped the sa'aros of Rabbi Shimon. He hasn't grasped the tzimtzumim of Rabbi Shimon. He hasn't grasped the depth of the Torah that will continue after Rabbi Shimon, which is the capacity of the Zohar HaKadosh to be mamtek all dinim adei ad, that kedai lismoch exists throughout all of the generations. And Rabbi Shimon is the secret of being mamtik all of the sha'arim, all of the sa'aros, which is the secret of Lag BaOmer, why people go to Rabbi Shimon to cut the hair, to reveal that it's specifically Rabbi Shimon who has the ability of kutzin shel halacha that he draws down from Rabbi Akiva, tilin on the sa'aros of the osios, the secret of the sa'aros, the secret of the hairs, which on the one hand are concealing, on the other hand they're revealing, the yud gimel tikunei dikna, which is the secret of the moicha stima and chachma stima and the shirish of butzina dekardenusa and the hamtakas adinim b'sharasham and the sa'aros which represent mamish l'chamar tav al dordev, the secret of butzina dekardenusa that Yaakov Avinu is revealing, and Rabbi Shimon is revealing it also. That Rabbi Shimon, Eliyahu Hanavi, as the Zohar HaKadosh is going to come along and say that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't even understand the tzimtzumim of Rabbi Shimon yet. And Rabbi Yehuda wakes up and he says it's true that all of the chachma of the world has been hidden from the time that my Rebbe has departed. And Rav Abba raises his hands again, like Arimas Yadav Etzlusa, not like Rabbi Shimon who opens his hands up, but he places his hands upon his head, and it's the same gesture that he awakens within those sa'aros. He screams out, and that's the hisairus man, that's the awakening and the desire when we come to terms with the deficiency that we have by not having the hiskalus of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, revealing Torah from his mouth to us in our generation, is cause for each and every neshama to mourn the departure of Rabbi Shimon. And it's in the mourning of the departure of Rabbi Shimon that we come to uncover the presence of Rabbi Shimon. Kol mi sheyesh lechizuk me Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, kol mi shema'amin Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai yesh lechizuk Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Anybody who remembers Rabbi Shimon, anyone who believes in Rabbi Shimon and feels pain over the departure of the light of Rabbi Shimon, will also retrieve the light of Rabbi Shimon that comes back down. And that's what's being taught over here. That Rav Abba comes along and he says, you know what, you're right, there's nothing that remains. Rabbi Shimon gave us food, Rabbi Shimon gave us lechem and hashemayim, man, to eat from, and nothing remains, but something remains. Because the tzaddik prepares for the departure. What remains is that innermost point, that sansenas haman, that one piece and that one measure of the man that is going to remain after the departure of the man, that's going to remain after the departure of Rabbi Shimon. And that's going to be for remembrance. And that irreducible point of the man, that irreducible light of Yaakov Avinu, that Yaakov Avinu lo meis, ma banav b'chayev, afu b'chayev, the continuity of the light of the tzaddikim, as the Talmidim reveal that all that they have is actually from the tzaddikim, like Rabbi Akiva who gives chizuk to Moshe Rabbeinu, like Rabbi Elazar who gives chizuk to Rabbi Shimon, and like all of the Talmidim of any tzaddik, who when we learn the words of the tzaddikim and we draw out more of the light of the tzaddikim because they're there for us, that we are the shamash who lights the candles, and the shamash has to light the candle in order for the candle to illuminate. And the light of the tzaddikim and the Yechidei Hadoros is contingent upon our yearning for that light of the tzaddikim, that yearning that the lost child, the lost boy and girl in the forest, in the 13th tale of Rabbi Nachman's tales, that there was a ga'agua, a yearning, and then ultimately with the yearning after the tzaddik, then suddenly the tzaddik appears immediately. So Rabbi Abba is saying there's still a tzantzena saman. But the tzantzena saman is not revealed. It's not in a revealed way. It's a secret of tzniusa. It's a secret of the reisha de loas yada. It's the secret of the tzafir de tzniusa, tzafir de shakal b'metkala. Yes, Rabbi Shimon might not be available. The light of the tzaddikim, Moshe Rabbeinu might be buried in a tzalmud of haganlei, below yada ishas kluraso. But as the Heilige Morainayim says, the reason lo yada ishas kluraso is not because we don't know where he's buried. He's buried in the very most inner point of each and every one of our hearts. What we don't have access to is the innermost point of each and every one of our own hearts. And that's why we're able to say to ourselves, Moshe Shapir Ka'amart, Moshe Shapir Ka'amart, you're Moshe, I'm Moshe, we're all Moshe, in spite of the fact that we don't know exactly where Moshe is buried, somewhere wedged between the Ratzon and the Shmad, the desire towards connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the terror over the apparent absence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's in that place, the bridge of Moshe Rabbeinu that holds the gap, that Sansenas Haman, that irreducible place of Tzniusa, of the Reisha de Loas Yada that remains at the moment of death, which is the secret of the Etzem Haluz. Yaakov Avinu comes down to Mitzrayim to die, but what is revealed in death is the irreducible survival of that which remains, which is the secret of Luz, which is what the Zohar HaKadosh goes into in describing Luz and Yerushalayim in this week's Parsha, and the secret of Tchias HaMesim, and how when Yaakov Avinu wanted to be Megala to us the Kates and Sasim Meito, it wasn't that he lost what he wanted to reveal to us. He revealed to us the very nature of losing it. He revealed to us the fact that we'll always perpetually be trying to anticipate the redemption, but we'll always be waiting to self-sacrifice ourselves with the stimas, the einin, into that shoresh ha'elyon of Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is the secret of the B'tzina de Kardenusa that's mamtik all of the dinim. And that's what Rabbi Abba is saying over here, that yes, Rabbi Shimon is gone, and yes, wisdom is gone, but nevertheless, there still remains a portion, there still remains an irreducible portion, and it's hidden within the Aron Kodesh. And yes, it might not be revealed because it's written that it has to be hidden and preserved, but it's in order to be made concealed and held in modesty. And snius is not the hiding of something, but rather it's the revelation of something through hiding itself. How can we ever reveal secrets of Torah? How can we ever know? And Rabbi Abba whispers to Rabbi Yehuda in a whisper, that person that you saw was certainly Eliyahu Hanavi. And the reason he didn't reveal any secrets was because the true secret he wanted to reveal to you was how great your Rebbe was, that he lived in that generation, and they cry and they cry and they cry upon his departure. Amar Lei, Rabbi Yehuda says, it's kedai to cry over him. Rabbi Yehuda would cry every single day. That he didn't enter into the Idra Kadisha. He was in the Idra Kadisha with Rabbi Shimon, but he didn't die in the Idra Kadisha like the three Talmidim who ascended in a place of Rachamim Rabim. Rabbi Yehuda would say, woe to me that I didn't have that moment. With those three that ascended up. Woe to the generation that won't see it because it's been transferred over already. This secret of the whisper, this secret of the lechisha, we see earlier that after Rabbi Shimon passes away, all there is whispering. And that when Rabbi Abba wants to convey to Rabbi Yehuda the secret pain over the departure and the death that takes shape, but also about the promise of the continuity of it. So what he does is he whispers. What's a whisper? What's a lechisha? A whisper is not knowing whether I want to say something or not say something. If I want to say something, I say it out loud. If I don't want to say something, I remain silent. A whisper is a betwixt and between liminal position between saying something and not saying at once, as we're going to see as we get to the Heilige place in the Ijarabba with the Adir Bamarom, Vai Igalina, Vai Ilogalina, woe to me if I reveal, woe to me if I don't reveal. Ultimately, those two stages are taking place simultaneously in the fact that something that is being revealed is always concealing and something that concealing is always revealing. But this secret of the Lechisha, this secret of the whisper, is the way that the Tanaim and the Chavraya are whispering to the fact that even though we can't speak, even though we've lost our ability to speak, even though we're descending into exile, even though we don't have anymore, nevertheless we can whisper. Whispering is the secret of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Lambad. It's the Tzike Kedera. We can't admit that something is gone. We can't admit to the fact that it's still here. And what we have to do is whisper it to our hearts, to be lachesh b'levavchon, to whisper to ourselves the confidence that every moment of departure and concealment is ultimately there to reveal a higher and higher light. And Rabbi Nachman of Breslov explains that we see very often that this mourning that the Chavrai are doing for Rabbi Shimon, many times in the Zohar HaKadosh, they do it when Rabbi Shimon is around. They do it when Rabbi Shimon is still alive. And the question that Rabbi Nachman asks is, why are they preemptively and anticipatorily mourning the departure of their tzaddik if he's still very much alive in front of them. And it's exactly what Rabbi Abba says Eliyahu Hanavi was coming to do when he came to teach Rabbi Yehuda something. It was trying to awaken the desire for that which one already has. When one gains something, a person loses sight of the desire for it. And it's only in a state of desire and distance that a person can cultivate a yearning closeness. But the secret of the descent down into Mitzrayim and the secret of exile and the secret of the departure of Yaakov and the secret of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai no longer teaching is that Eliyahu Hanavi comes to help us remember what we always already have. Not to give something new, but rather to give us new eyes, to open our eyes to that which is always taking shape, and to see the secret of Ma Zaro B'chayev, Afu B'chayev, that even though Yaakov Avinu is buried and Yaakov Avinu is concealed, and Rabbi Shimon is buried and Rabbi Shimon is concealed, and the world is covered over in a darkness and a tzimtzum, nevertheless, it doesn't mean that the light has gone anywhere, and it doesn't mean that anything has ever changed from the moment of prior to creation to after creation. And Be'ezras Hashem, as we enter into the exile of Parsha Shemos, we should arm ourselves with this secret of the B'tzina de Kardenusa, the secret of translating all of the concealment into a place of revelation, the secret of being Mahapech, the Eretz Ha'amim, into a Kli to reveal more Torah in Shnayim Mikra Be'achat Targum, which is Rosh Hashanah Shemos, which is why the Zohar is written in Aramaic, because it perpetually teaches us how to live beyond death, to uncover the Etzem Haluz, and to live a life of Yaakov Avinu Lo Meis, Be'ezras Hashem.